Welcome to Guardians of the Data. I'm your host, Ward Balzerzak. Each episode will explore the passions, expertise, and real-world experiences of security leaders who are helping the future of data security and governance. Guardians of the Data is made possible by support from Sentra. To learn more about our AI-powered data security platform, please visit sentra.io. Let's dive in. Really excited about our guest today. He is a seasoned security professional who's been in the industry for just over 2 decades, multiple certifications and degrees, including a Master's of Science in Digital Forensics. That's awesome. Definitely want to hear about that. He is currently the Deputy CISO at ADT. Please welcome Rick DeLoach to the show.
Yeah, thanks, Ford. Nice to be here. Excited for the conversation here. As an avid podcast listener, I always like to put my hat in the ring when I can, and hopefully our listeners out there can get something very fruitful.
Oh, I guarantee they will, given your background, sir. So, with that, let's just jump right in. So, you're deputy CISO. There's a lot of stuff that goes into that, right? A lot of responsibilities. So, in your professional opinion, what is the biggest challenge organizations are facing when it comes to data security?
Yeah, I think it's really just that foundational item of data discovery and data classification. Um, like anything in IT and security, uh, uh, you don't know how to protect something if you don't know what it is and where it's at, right? um, just like uh, just like physical assets that we have. CIS critical controls. I think it's number one. Inventory of all your assets. Well, data is an asset when you think about it, and it's the same challenge, right? Knowing what you have, and you got to know what you have before you can know how to protect it.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, I've been in this space. I love data security. I've been in it for about 20 years, and I'll tell you what. Today it's cloud, it's SaaS, it's no real perimeter, BYOD, right? You name it. It's all these things. Back in the day, you didn't have that, right? You had the data centers, you had file shares on-prem, but the problem statement hasn't changed, right? It goes back again, like you said, having the inventory. What is it? Where is it at? So, how are you solving for that? What are you guys doing either at ADT or in any of your prior roles?
Yeah, I think the real key to having some success, I don't know if anyone has full success, but just having a very structured program. It's process, it's policy, it's technology. Being able to draft a policy that can apply to all areas of your data is very important. So that way you don't have, a different policy for this data set over here, but over here, this data is different. So we're going to treat it a little bit differently in terms of policy. You really just want to align on one overarching policy if possible, makes things a lot easier. And then having the right processes in place for data handling, um, and the technologies that you're going to use for controlling access to the data. Maybe it's a DLP platform. That in itself can be a whole program. It can really branch out into a lot of things, but I think it really starts with the process and policies first, and then once you get a good handle on that, you can look at the appropriate technologies to apply to it.
That's crazy speak. So let me get this straight, right? So and I'll say I agree with you, full heartedly agree with you. Um, and I'm sure you've seen this. I've seen this plenty of times. There are a lot of organizations out there that say, "Hey, I have a problem," or "I think I have a problem." Right? In this case, data security, data sprawl. Maybe they had a breach, right? Maybe they had something like that, and right away they say, I need a tool, right? I need to go buy something. I need some technology. I need the latest and greatest DLP. I need the latest and greatest, right? Insert technology name here. What I just heard from you, just to sum it up a little bit, is hey, start with governance, right? Process and policy. Um, how have you shifted? Because I'm sure you've dealt with that in your day to day, where people are like, "Got this problem, need technology." How have you kind of pumped those brakes and said, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! I hear you. Do we have the right framework in place, governance, to actually be successful with that?"
Yeah, and I think that's a journey that I've definitely been on with maybe maybe prioritizing the wrong place first, right? Maybe starting with the technology and just making a broad statement of, hey, we're going to protect our data. We want to protect our sensitive data, and that data could be customer data or proprietary confidential data. Um, Wherever and whatever that is, right? So we're just going to apply DLP and look for instances of potential data loss. Um, and then when we find something, we'll try and follow up with some sort of policy statement that that may not have really been a policy that was signed off at the executive levels, or more so just a security kind of hey, you shouldn't be doing this. This it goes against the policy, and I think we get caught in that trap a lot as security practitioners of finding bad things, or finding people that are doing things that we don't want them to do because it can expose us to risk. And we just say, hey, you can't do that. It's against policy. Okay, well, can you show me that policy? I've never seen it before. And then it just leads into a very awkward kind of conversation, right? So, you really need a good policy framework around data security. Um, so, for those that are starting, from scratch, it's really starting with that policy, trying to establish a policy framework, some governance, and also one thing that I haven't mentioned yet is aligning with the business very closely, right? Um, Getting feedback from the business on, hey, this data is the most important data we have. Having that conversation with them. Well, why is it important to you? What would happen if this data was stolen? What would happen if this data becomes unavailable? What would happen if this data um, changes in a way that can misrepresent what it's supposed to be? um, so you definitely want to have that business alignment up front and everywhere along the journey with you.
I love that. I think that's a pretty key thing that, certainly in data security, but I'll just say security in general. I think a lot of folks forget about that, the business alignments. A lot of folks get into security. I know I did. They wanted to be the masters of no. No, you can't do this. No, you can't do that because of security. And one of my first mentors said, Ward, you need to be the master of know, KNOW, right? Know what the business is doing, how they're doing it, but also if they're doing something wrong, educate them, right? Here's why you're doing it, right? To know in that fashion. So let's stay on that business. I think business is big, and I know a few organizations that I worked with when I would come in to consult or whatever. I would ask the question that you said: what is your sensitive data, right? What is your proprietary information? What is your secret sauce? What's the critical stuff? And a lot of times, I would get the blank stare and say, "Well, we've got PII." It's like, all right, congratulations, you got PII. Certainly, we need to protect that. How have you kind of broken in with some of those business conversations to get to the real nuts and bolts to say, yeah, we've got the basics, right? We've got those basics everyone knows about, but let's take it another step. What makes us special? What makes our data special?
Yeah, I think it's having that conversation with them and maybe just cutting to the point, straight to the point of, hey, what happens if you no longer have this data? Or what happens if this data is exposed publicly? Um, what is that going to do to the business? How is that going to impact you? And from there, I think we start to get a lot more information and context around the data and how important it actually is. And if the data is that important to the business and can have a heavy impact if something happens to it, then it's worth protecting.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's the key again. You and I were talking, before, and I think you and I both agree. Most business users, people don't want to do bad, right? They're just there. They've got a job to do, and certainly most of the time, right? They're not thinking about security at all. They don't care. Security is kind of an impedance to doing their job quickly, efficiently, whatever. Layer on not just security, but thinking about the data, not just data security, data sensitivity, classification. If you got a classification process in the organization, um, it's tough, right? It's tough to get in there. So how, past those conversations, past the governance, how have you been successful in driving the ongoing education and awareness of data handling, data security, and things like that?
I mean, if you have good policies in place, obviously you can refer to those policies and say, hey, this is our policy around how we should be handling this data. And I can understand that you want to utilize, so and so tool or have this process around, working with this data to benefit your role and job, right? But sometimes that doesn't align with the policies. So, what we really have to do is work with them and come up with solutions. Solution that provides a secure method of data handling, data storage, whatever that is, and just partner with them versus trying to say, hey, you can't do this. Um, Usually that's once they see that it's a partnership and we are trying to help them, the conversation becomes a lot easier.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely felt the same way too. Instead of being the, big brother, right, Men in Black, whatever, coming in and saying no, you can't, or super secret squirrel type of things, being open, being honest, building that level of trust. I think trust is big. Certainly helps. So you kind of, in what you just said, you kind of alluded to, building, right? The business is doing things, building technology, whatever. I'm going to bring in something that you either love it or hate it, right? It's a big topic these days. I see you smiling. You probably know what it is. AI, right? Business. I mean, it's not new, right? We've been having AI conversations for the last 5 years. I mean, technically, there's been facets of AI and LLM and all that prior, but how are you handling that, especially in your role, right? Deputy CISO, that's big. How are you handling balancing security, but also I'm assuming, right, business innovation with folks wanting to use co-pilots and other things within your organization?
Sure. Right now, I want to say it's a balance, but I'm not sure it's quite balanced as of yet. Uh, but I'm a huge proponent of utilizing technologies. I think it's like most, it's going to be the future, and there's a lot of positive outcomes that we can gain from the usage of it. Um, Now, being a security guy, I want to make sure that how we're using it is being done securely and follows our policies, and doesn't expose us to a heavy amount of risk. And that's tough to do right now. I think we have policies and governance around AI usage, but the technologies aren't really there yet, right? For just Gen AI usage, if we're opening that up and we're not wanting to put in or not wanting our sensitive data to go into those platforms, you really need something up front, some sort of gate to either identify that data, uh, something that can be able to mask that data before it goes into that prompt. Um, and I think there's some solutions out there, but we're still very early. So like most innovations in technology, we're trying to catch up.
Yeah, I remember my last organization I worked for. AI was becoming huge, right? Everybody was doing it. I was working in the financial services sector, so there was folks, the front lines, that they wanted to use AI, Chat GPT in particular, to craft emails, to analyze the data, and it was like it was a weird day. It was like a Thursday, right? And for me, I don't typically think of Thursdays as being my weird days, right? That's a Monday or a Friday usually. Monday you're sleepy, Friday you're waiting for the weekend. It was a Thursday. Get called in this big meeting. A lot of executives, right? A lot of C individuals in there. And the bottom line of the meeting was shut off AI, right? That was the big thing. Shut it down. And I remember asking, like, what's our concern? What are we looking to do? And unfortunately, I didn't win the hey, let's pause and think about it. It was knee jerk reaction, shut it down. As you can imagine, right? It opened back up. Um, but the reason that happens, and it goes back to what you said, governance, right? We didn't have the framework, we didn't have the processes, we didn't have the data inventory. So there was a lot of fear around, oh my goodness, if people use this thing, not only we don't know what they're going to do with it, we have no control over it, right? So that was a fun time in that last organization.
Yeah, and I would think that's happened in more organizations than we might think, right? Because it came on so fast. The initial response was, okay, let's block it uh, everywhere we can until we can fully understand and wrap our heads around it and get some policies out there um, and come up with a plan for it.
Yeah. Yeah, and it goes back to the business, right? The business wants to innovate, they want to move quick, and gosh darn security guys standing in the way of being agile and being quick.
Right.
So I'm really curious. So data security in the enterprise. Um, I feel like financial services, they have it easy for the most part. Easy air quotes, right? They've got compliance, they got regulatory items that they need to adhere to. For the most part, again, air quotes, right? It's easy to understand what the high amounts of sensitive data are going to be. Defense type enterprises, kind of the same thing, right? There's certain things they have to do for their contracts, and it's relatively easy to understand their data. For a company like yours, right, ADT, you're a security company. Um, have you had to kind of sit down and rethink that a little bit? I'm going to just make an assumption that you don't necessarily have a black and white compliance standard or regulatory thing that you have to adhere to.
Yeah, yeah, we don't really. And for us, I think it's the data that we do know about that our business side and our IT partners are very aware of because that can be structured data that is in a data lake, and we know about it. Our data analytics team is working on that. It's an important part of our business, and that kind of stuff is easy. or at least easier to identify because it's known. We can tackle that, and then there's there's all the other stuff that unstructured data, data that is on laptops, um, mobile devices that people may have, and uh, we may not think that all that data is sensitive to us or important because maybe it didn't come out of one of our data lakes that we know about. um, but all of a sudden we may hear about something and like, oh well, this data turns out to be very very important to our business or this office or this service that we're providing. And then we have to tackle that and see how we can align it with our processes, policies, and then how can we protect it.
Yeah, yeah, I can imagine it brings in a another level of difficulty for yourself and your organization when when again you don't have the regulatory or compliance backing. Sounds like you've got the governance side figured out, so you at least have that. You can hold up your policy and say, "Here's the thing that you either are or aren't doing, or you need to adhere to." That's fantastic.
Right.
Here's maybe an interesting question for you. I've been asked this myself a few times, and my answer probably has changed just about every time. And my answer changes when I ask it. You'll know why. My answer changes just because of you know how volatile our industry is, how quickly things are changing. So, I mean, most attacks that are happening these days is about data, right? Like you kind of go back in time, probably to when you and I started our careers. A lot of attacks were probably bored kids just looking to do stuff. Like it was the internet graffiti, if you will, right? They were defacing stuff, taking down a service. Ha ha ha! Look what happens. It felt like it was a little bit less about the data, at least those script kiddies and stuff that were out there. These days, ransomware, all of that, it's obviously about data. So, with that, with looking at LinkedIn or other news sources and seeing the new breach, daily, weekly, monthly, do you think we're starting to win? Right? Do you think the defenders are winning? Are we deadlocked? Are we losing? Where do you think we're falling on this battlefield?
I mean, in terms of data breaches and what we're seeing today with ransomware gangs, the older playbook of coming into an environment and encrypting the data and holding it ransom that way uh, seems to be a little less prevalent than our current status of the data leaves the environment and is then ransomed. For purposes of, hey, we will expose this data and release it if you don't pay this ransom, um, which is a different problem, right? Because we go from just trying to get our business back online to now a potential breach of our data and exposure that can be even more impactful to our organizations. um, one thing that going back to like data discovery and data classification uh, is being able to prove that the data came out of your environment. So we see lots of news bites, hacker forums where they'll say, hey, posting this data for sale from so and so company, it's 10 gigabytes, 100 gigabytes, whatever it is, and they'll provide a little sample. And for organization that may be impacted by that, they're looking at, well, is this data real or not? Is this our data? Like, how can we verify that? And if you don't have a good data catalog or data inventory, it's very tough to then go back and say like, well, I don't recognize that. I'm not sure what system that data came from. So now you're trying to run around uh, all different parts of your business, asking like, "Hey, does this data look familiar to you?" And then you have to try and verify. Well, when do we think this data may have been stolen? If it does appear to be out of that certain location, so uh, I think there's challenges. Not only in just data protection, making sure your data doesn't move out of your environment, but it's ensuring like that what the data is that you have.
Yeah, yeah. You kind of gave me a little bit of PTSD as you were running through that. I was remembering back to one of the first organizations I worked for, one of my first security gigs, and we were notified about some CAD drawings. So I worked for in the manufacturing industry. There are some CAD drawings found online under somebody's profile. They were potentially sensitive, right? And the signal flare went off. Oh my goodness, right? Alarms are blaring. We've got a problem. And it's like, all right. And I remember looking at it with my boss. We were sitting there. It's like, we were the security folks. There was two of us in this organization, and we had no clue. We had no clue what we were looking at. Number one, since we had no clue what we were looking at, we didn't know the sensitivity, and surprise, surprise, we didn't have a data inventory, right? So we didn't even know where this might have came from. So, Q, people are saying, the world's burning. Not really, but people were concerned. And now we're having to go and have conversations to say, like, we found this thing. Does this look familiar to you? And, it was just, it was unreal, right? So a situation now, long story short, ended up being nothing, right? Of course. But it took us about 2 weeks, right? From somebody saying, hey, this is a problem to, okay, what is this? Who do we talk to? Have all these interviews with all these various groups just to find out it was a nothing burger, right? No problem at all. It ended up being, yeah, they were a former employee, but um, they kind of had a hobby where they made their own CAD drawings of vehicles, essentially, like not even stuff that we were building at that organization. So, man, oh man, would we have benefited from having a data inventory where we could have said, okay, there's this thing, all right, CAD drawings. Here's what we have, here's where they're at, and be able to trace that, right? That could have really helped that situation and taken it from weeks down to, I mean, shoot, this was years ago, so not hours, but maybe days. It saved a lot of work at that point.
Yeah, being in a reactive state like that is definitely not a fun place to be for sure.
No.
The more productive you can be, and having that inventory, it's going to help you a lot. But it's also in terms of new breach disclosure requirements, you have to have it. You have to be able to provide a rapid assessment of the impact.
Yeah, yeah, and I feel like that's tough for a lot of organizations. I'm not saying nobody out there has it figured out. I think a lot of organizations are on the right track to figure it out. But I'll tell you, I have not seen anybody that I would throw up on the top pedestal, give them 5 gold stars, and say, "You guys are perfect." Right? I don't think that exists yet in today's day and age of data security.
Right, right. Or you're perfect until you're not.
Right. Right, right. Yeah. You think you're perfect, and then you are proved very wrong in the moment at that point. Well, hey, the first half of this episode, we've been learning from you on data security. We learned how governance is super important, policy, technology obviously plays in there once you have everything else, and you highlighted business partnership and involving the business, all really good things for our listeners to take note of and to look to emulate in their own programs. So, kind of going to the second half here, we'd like to learn about you. You're a deputy CISO. I was looking at your LinkedIn. You've definitely grown in your responsibilities over the years. Take us back in time. what was your journey, and did you know that you were going to become a cybersecurity leader?
The definitely not. That definitely wasn't the plan early on. Early on, eh, first year of college or so, I was in a finance program, general finance, going to classes that weren't all that thrilling, but it was kind of well, you have to take them and put in the work. So, I was taking those classes during the day, coming home and just playing on my computer, building computers, learning how to do a little bit of coding here and there. And so then one day I was just like, why am I doing, finance when I look, my real passion and what I want to do is computer. So I switched programs, went into a program that was information systems technology, which really was, like half hands on, half theory, um, which which was really fun, because you actually got to do things that were, current at the time, like Cisco networking, Microsoft Server administration, those types of courses. Um, so I gained a lot of experience in that, and said, yeah, this is what I want to do. I want to work in IT and do networking administration, these sort of things. And towards the end of my program, there were some security courses. So I took those and said, "Wow, this is really fun, and seems like security is the next big thing here. So maybe I should pivot." And one of those courses was in digital forensics, which I really enjoyed. So after graduating, uh, my university, University of Central Florida, opened up a digital forensics master's program. So naturally, I just said, "Well, this is this is what I want to do." So went right into it. And even though it was a very pretty specialized program in digital forensics, um, I got a good back. I felt like I got a good backbone in digital security. So after that, I went into the field and um, really was just like an IT security analyst, and just tried applying some of those forensic things that I learned to how to protect, how to spot an incident, how to detect things, and then how to investigate. So that's kind of how I started, and I kept just kind of growing from there, getting into different areas of cybersecurity, um, getting into whatever I could, whether it was security or just something IT related, or maybe even some um, business initiatives that they had going. I just tried to inject myself anywhere I could. So I've been at ADT now for 11 years. I came on as a security engineer, and I saw a lot of opportunity to grow the security programs, mostly in the technology space, because that was the passion at the time, and so we made a lot of great changes in there in growing the program, and year over year, I just gained more responsibilities. I moved up to a manager level role, and then associate director, and now deputy CISO for 3 years, which I really love being in this role. It kind of sits sits right in between, the technical teams that we have. So I feel like I'm not too far away from the technical aspect of cybersecurity, and then I'm helping out our CISO with all those executive level um, conversations and initiatives that they have going on with the business, and how I can help there. So for me, it's always just trying to be involved in anything that I can, and be useful. Provide some benefit wherever I am.
So I've got to ask, because you and I actually have a very, very similar background, which is very funny and small world esque. But I know as I was growing my own career, I often had reports and other mentees come to me and say, "How do I get up to the next level?" And a lot of folks out there that come from a technical background assume that because they're technical they can't really get up to the deputy CISO or CISO ranks, right? There's a perception out there that most folks in those roles come from a GRC background, right? And they don't have those technical chops. So any do you have any recommendations for those folks out there similar to you or I that have that technical background and really desire to get up into those ranks?
Yeah, I think what's helped me the most is just not siloing myself into specific things. Trying to have a expand my knowledge as broadly as possible. So I wasn't seen as just a specialist. Like there may be a couple areas that, I have a high level of knowledge in that can be useful, but I still want knowledge in every area. So when I'm talking to someone, maybe a peer in IT or at a leadership level, I can know what I'm talking about, right? Even if I'm not an expert in that area. And I think that goes a long way. And then just trying to get involved in whatever you can, trying to get some responsibility. Don't say no to opportunities. Um, throughout my time in being a leader, not only have I led security teams, but other teams in IT, which was a great experience because my first step into leadership was just cybersecurity. So can I translate my leadership skills into other teams? And that was an opportunity that was there, and I'm definitely not going to say no. So having yes as an answer, and a good attitude to go after it can go a long way, I think.
Love it. Love it. Got an interesting question for you. This is something that I've been thinking about as well in my own career because I also, I did the whole college thing. Similar to yourself, I started on a different path and then said, "Oh, look at technology," and I kind of veered that direction. So, if you could go back in time and talk to your younger self, whether it be college self, first day on the job, whatever, what advice would you give yourself?
Yeah, that's a great question. I was I was kind of thinking about this the other day because just like you said, I've been in working in IT for 20 years now, with cybersecurity being most of them. And I was thinking, what does the next 20 years hold for me? And it's how was I successful in my first 20 years to get to where I'm at? And very early on, if I were to tell myself anything, I'm not sure I would tell myself anything that different. I put the work in, with an open mind, and so I don't have any regrets in any decisions that I made. Um, so I'm not sure if that's the answer you were looking for. Um, but I think if we were, telling someone right now that was interested in the field and looking to, have a career in cybersecurity, it's put the time in. Put the time in, just like anything. Put the time in up front, and it'll pay dividends in the long term. Um, so play the long game, and do the right things at the beginning.
Love that. Yeah, same for myself. I think the only advice I'd probably give younger me is, thinking back to my 20s, put the ego aside, right? Um, get the chip off the shoulder. Just, I like what you said. Just say yes, right? Be open to the opportunity. Be open to trying something and gain the experience. Love it. Love the introspection there. So, hey Rick, if folks want to connect with you, what's the best way?
Yeah, the best way is really LinkedIn. I'm not super active on social platforms, but I do get messages in LinkedIn and pretty responsive. I like seeing what is going on in the LinkedIn world aside from a lot of vendors. Um, touting their awards and how great their tools are. But more so of just peers, hearing from them what their challenges are, seeing how they're making progress and seeing where they're moving to. Yes.
Awesome. Sounds great. Well, this has been a great episode. Thank you so much for joining us today, Rick.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Ward.
Perfect. And big thank you to our audience. If you learned something today, if you laughed, if you want to know more, please continue to follow us. Please tell someone else about the podcast. Let's get more listeners on here. Again, big thank you, Rick, for joining us.
Thanks.
All right. This has been another exciting episode of Guardians of the Data. See you next time. That's a wrap on another episode of Guardians of the Data. Thanks for tuning in. For show notes and more, visit guardiansofthedata.show. Guardians of the Data is made possible by support from Sentra. To see how we help organizations discover and classify all of their data accurately and automatically while quickly achieving petabyte scale data protection without the fuss, please visit Sentra.io. Catch you next time.